right. Well, good morning, everybody. Eric, N1JUR, and hey, welcome. And like I said, hopefully your morning's doing good to another Brew and Activate. You know, for those that might be joining, this is our second episode. We're going to explore everything about parks on the air here. And so whether you might be an activator, a chaser, or hunter, or just starting to get in the hobby and you're curious about everything POTA, then you landed in the right place. We're going to kind of get into a lot of great stuff. Every week, I like to talk about the good, the bad, some downright interesting stuff that happens all around parks on the air. And so as we get deeper and deeper into this every week, there'll be more and more juicy tidbits and morsels that I've gleaned, and hopefully we can share with one another. As hey, we all know POTA is a great activity in the ham radio community, and there are some awesome things where we can highlight, definitely some of those fun, quirky, crazy moments that we all enjoy, and that makes POTA kind of special. So grab your coffee here, or maybe you're a tea drinker there, or brown water in the vice of Ted Lasso. Let's get comfy and let's get into it. All right. We got a couple of folks here in the chat. Good morning, folks. A4AT. Good morning, guys. Still working on the chat here, and I wish I could type. My typing is going to be a challenge today. Coffee and brain have not quite fully connected here, but glad you guys are joining here. Let me know how the audio is, if it's overpowering. Good morning, Shannon. Good to see you guys in there. So I figured we're going to kind of start this, episode or this live stream every week out with, maybe a little POTA tip. So if you got a couple you want to share, throw them in the chat. But mine is, this week is going to be kind of just what I'll call the layup. And this layup, I'm going to try to keep it real. So, if you've been an activator and doing it for quite a while, depending on, if you live in a place where, a lot of us call the state bird the mosquito, you probably struggled quite often with retreating to your car and doing a little bit of an activation from the car without, having to deal with nature. I have equipped my bags. Thanks, Jason, for letting me know on the audio there. Appreciate that. I have went out and basically invested in thermocells. So if any of you guys may have seen these are these lovely little globes here to my, or I should say to my left here up here, if I can point. These things are a lifesaver. I have gone to my favorite local park that I do a lot of videos from, and just in general activate. And it is always in the late afternoon, mosquitoes love to come out at that point. So yeah, I always remember to bring them, leave them in my bag. I've invested in a bunch of them. So all my bags get them, including taking them to the beach because they're great for sand flies and a few other things too. So, make sure if you haven't thrown that in your bag, or, you struggle with those mosquitoes. And if you don't, I appreciate, and glad you don't. I'm sure you probably have a whole list of other things that you deal with outside of our little, state bird there. But yeah, it'll keep those activations long, and especially where their bands are up and down. You need to work a little harder these days to get your 10 or 12 contacts in the book. So yeah, I think last one I picked up recently, I paid about $26 at Wally World. So they're pretty cheap investment for a major comfort. And anybody who knows me and has hung out with me activation wise knows that I don't skimp on comfort. And so, yeah, there'll be many future tips that you'll probably realize that I like it when I activate in comfort, makes the whole experience better. But yeah, this is just one more thing to throw on the list there. So let's put a little pause here and say hello to a few folks in the chat. Got a couple people in here. Glad to see all you guys. I see, like I said, Peter Jackal, good to see you. Jason and Shannon, as always. Roger, good to see you there this morning. And that's all we got so far, but glad you guys are up with me, hanging out. Like I said, we are going to do this every week, every Sunday morning, just about 60, 90 minutes. And we're just talk everything POTA as we kind of go on. The whole plan is, to kind of interact with you guys and learn, and maybe I can glean some stuff from you guys, and maybe, we can teach each other some great ways to be better POTA activators or even hunters, because I definitely I don't do a whole lot of that, but when I do, I know there's some good things that you can pick up, techniques and tricks from that stuff too. So all good around. Yeah, so this week, just a couple of things. We've got, I decided kind of to culminate. I combed through probably a good day and a half of both the dumpster fire we know as Facebook's POTA group, and the POTA group on Discord, looking for kind of questions that commonly get asked by a lot of either newbies, or maybe you might be a semi-seasoned hunter or activator, and you always throw those questions out, but you kind of cringe, and you don't want to have to deal with a few folks coming back at you with you don't know that attitude, and or higher and thou than I kind of approach. So again, here, I enjoy doing these live streams. I enjoy hanging out with you guys, but bottom line is I don't know everything, and I don't ever claim to either. I just love doing POTA. And so, if you hung out with me and we've done POTAs in the past, that it's always just a fun to do, and we always make it interesting. And I probably don't comply by every rule that's out there. I definitely obviously try to play within the spirit of stuff, because every conditions and every scenario is a little different. But yeah, it's again, it's not a contest. We're not working, our full-time jobs. Although, if you do hear that there's an opening somewhere, I will definitely, apply, because I think I am very fully qualified for it. But yeah, until that happens, yeah, we're just going to do this for fun. And so, yeah, we're just going to learn and kind of go from there. So, all right, let's see here. Yes. Yeah, I remember Black Flies, and yeah, they haven't come out quite as in full force recently. I've just been battling most of the mosquitoes, and so yeah, I think those Enercells, Thermacells will definitely keep those at bay too as well. So yeah, definitely, if you're up here in the New England area, make sure you have a couple, or at least have a few folks that do have them with you. The devil's ticks. Interesting. Yes. We don't have many of them up here, because most of the parks tend to be, well grassed out here, Shannon. So we don't have to trudge too far in the woods, but once we kind of leave those general areas, yeah, then that's where you better have, all your tick armor on, and, everything, working, to protect yourself, because I don't usually bring the dog with me when I go out, doing an activation, because I know when I bring him back, he will be covered head to toe in them, and he is a small little fluffy Bichon, if you've seen photos, and is almost impossible to find a tick in him until it's too late. So all good, and great advice there. So yeah, we're gonna throw this probably for the next hour or so. We're going to talk, common questions for, maybe if you're a POTA newbie, and, if you hear that, I don't know, what your state is. Have you done a little POTA? Or maybe you might be a seasoned person, or maybe you just might be in the midst of it, and it might be, all you do is live, eat, and breathe it. But we're going to, kind of talk about some of the questions. And so, to interact with you guys, if you got a couple along the way, and I'll kind of do some easy layups to start here. The idea is, really, I'm just trying to put this content out there for, say, someone who might be starting. And this kind of first section we'll talk is what I call, as I mentioned, easy layups. These are kind of the common ones that I found a lot that were asked heavily in things like the Facebook groups, and every once in a while on the POTA Discords. And so, yeah, we're going to down there. So feel free to throw a bunch in the comments there that we can share. Yeah, I'm hopefully going to, my goal with some of this stuff that we're talking about, and I've got a pretty decent lineup, is that I'm looking to kind of build a little bit of like an ebook, and, it's going to be a community effort, with the idea that it covers a good chunk of the stuff that, say a POTA person, when maybe they're trying to start to activate, that, can create. I know there's materials out there, and ARLs put their stuff out there and whatever else. But I'd love to be able to kind of create a community kind of thing that people can, kind of expand upon. And there's just a lot of great stuff in here that we can throw together for somebody. And I know a lot of clubs, at least our club, my local club here in New England, we always try to promote POTA. We always try to keep people, getting out and activating, especially even with the new hams and stuff like that, it's always good to be able to say, hey, here's a little bit of a quick, PDF that you can kind of glean through, and it might, inspire you. So yeah, I'll as you guys start to throw stuff there in the chat along the way, I'll slurp that stuff up comments wise and add that to this little book, and we can definitely all contribute and give back kind of in an easy way. So let's take a little second here and dive into it. Let's see here as I pull up my list. So these are my first easy layups. As we all probably, if you've actually, real quick question, I'm going to stop here for a second. Just in the chat, if you're there, feel free. How many of you guys actually do an activation? If you do an activation, throw a 1 in there. I haven't gotten the polls set up. I was originally going to try to get that going, but time will allow over periods of time. We'll do a little bit more, future polls and stuff like that. But for right now, if you are an activator, you've done at least one activation, throw a 1 in the chat there real quick. Just let me know. And then that way, we're curious to see, kind of what the skill level is a little bit here. All right, cool. Looks like most of all you guys here have done an activation or two or a couple. I definitely know Shannon's been heavily in it, being, official, hillbilly card carrying member there. We always love to see them go out and do stuff and work them when we can. But yeah, so all right, let's start with some of our easy layups here today. So the first one, as always, I can't tell you how many times when I do a presentation with a new club, that maybe either doesn't have a POTA person in there or nobody to kind of like lead the charge. They always have the typical questions. So like the first one is like, do I have to sign up to be a hunter? We all know that no, this is one of the easiest kind of methods we all love to do when we're in the POTA program, is that you don't have to participate in terms of having a login or being able to track all of your contacts, because the program does it for you. So it's been awesome to see. And really cool that, you don't, for anybody who just wants to be able to kind of just lightly participate, being a hunter is the fastest and easiest way to kind of get into that. Next kind of easy layup here today is, how do I submit my logs? Well, my gosh, if you've been in POTA for a long time, you'll remember back to the days, the Stone Age days, as we all remember, where you had to submit your logs to an area coordinator. How many of those do you guys remember waiting impatiently for area coordinators to post their logs to the POTA website after you've done an activation? I remember fondly how many people were so mad in the Facebook groups that it was taking forever for their Support Your Park, the 1 or 2 Support Your Park weekends that we had that initially started, to get their logs uploaded. And, I felt bad for all the area coordinators because they had their hands full for sure. But now that's way easier now. And as a community, I think we're pushing hard to even get into auto upload. So we don't even have to lift that little pinky finger anymore. Yeah, submitting logs is really simple. Obviously, I won't beat a horse to death, but the simplest way is get yourself set up with an account on the POTA.app. And then once you do that, there's a nice little button up in the top right-hand corner in your profile that allows you to just upload your log, and it kind of does the heavy lifting for you. So as long as your log's in an ADIF format, and if you're new to ham radio, just Google what is an ADIF, ADIF file, and you can find out more. There's a ton of tools out there that help convert that. And a lot of the loggers out there, like Polo and Hammers, and any one of the typical N3 FJPs, always have an export feature for ADIF. So yeah, if we got questions along the way, or come trigger something, feel free to throw it in there. I would love to kind of chit chat around that, and I'll star those as they come. Yep, Shannon, that's a great tip there. ADIF Master is free. I'm actually got a future episode that we'll be talking nuts and bolts on logs and using ADIF Master, because I've had a lot of requests from folks to talk a little bit about more of that. and play around using it, because it's pretty powerful and it's really a great tool and free. So yeah, definitely if you Google ADIF Master, you will pull that down, and I use that heavily. So cool. All right, let me just start that real quick. Back to that, Roger. So the biggest one for a lot of the new technicians that I see happen a lot and has come across in our club in conversations and some of the demos and presentations I've done is, can I make contacts on a repeater? Well, there's only one, and we all know what that one repeater is and is allowed to. But if you're primarily on an HT and you're trying to make contacts, repeaters do not count, as we all know and are aware. However, you can coordinate a sked that way. I have done in places where I've gone out and need that extra few contacts. I'll hop up on a local repeater and see if I can raise somebody there and say, hey, I'm doing a POTA activation. I need a couple more contacts. Are you kind of in the general area where I could do a 5-2 contact with you, or a 70 centimeter contact or whatever? And so a lot of those that I've done in the past, it's a little weird to do it the first time, because you're kind of doing an ask for someone who might not know, what's going on. But I've had always positive results in that sense. And so, yes, you can use a repeater to schedule it. You can't use the contact on it. The only repeater that you are allowed to do is the ISS repeater. So if you're doing an ISS satellite contact, that does count and works to your benefit. So, keep that in mind if you are doing some of the satellite work. But if you didn't bring your satellite stuff, which I don't always bring and I don't always think of, but I would love to maybe kind of try to do more of that. I think in the future, if I can, talk to trying to think, Digital Rancher, a few others that are big satellite guys, and see what their expenses on. Maybe bring them on and we'll talk a little bit about that stuff and seeing, how they do it, if they do it for POTA at all, or how they can kind of create that. So it'd be kind of cool to kind of dive into that. So if any of those seem out of whack, and again, like I said, these are not set in stone. So this is based off of my discovery and research. So if you know different or you think I'm off a little bit, feel free to let me know in the chat. Like I said, it's early in the morning here. It's 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning. So I'm usually sleeping in if I'm not doing this, but I prefer to do this and hang out with you guys. So let me know in the chat if I'm a little bit off or things might've changed. I know I had a similar scenario where I had actually did a video on my channel and I was talking about US test and how US test used to be the way you could have hunters gain contacts or points, but that is actually not the case. So like if you use US test as a place to test, and we're going to do a whole episode on US test, and I think all the benefits to having it and using it to test all your gear, it doesn't qualify as an official park. It also doesn't qualify anything for the hunters to get credit any longer. So, or even if it was the case, never been proven, but I actually got an email back from one of the area coordinators in POTA itself saying that wasn't the case, and just was helping correct the situation, which I was super thankful of because I always like to have at least good, valid information for a lot of folks. So let's go some of the other layups ones here. One of the things that happens a lot, that a lot of new activators that I've seen run into don't always deal with park rules. And not a lot of the park rules are always posted per se in terms of, how to and what you can do when you go into certain parks. Now, the benefit here in New England, at least, a lot of the parks that we have are pretty, what I'll call low key. And the benefit of them being low key is that I'm not going to see a park ranger come around. So maybe putting an antenna in a tree or, staking a vertical down in the ground is not going to raise any, eyebrows or anything like that. But if you're in, certain national parks, I know a few folks that when they activate, they have to be pretty much stealthy or very hidden away off to the side because the park is very well patrolled, very well cherished. So rule number one is, especially if you're activating in a very big popular park, make sure you know exactly what you can and can't do. Like you might be able to, attach an antenna or vertical to a park bench, but you might not be able to put a vertical and an anchor in the ground. And that could be as simple as a spike too. You know, a lot of them, you know, I've had one case where I put a spike in the ground, and the ranger came running up like I was murdering Mother Nature, you know, right in front of his eyes. So, yes, rule one, antenna is always an important fact there, and yeah, definitely a good one to have in your back, you know, in the back of your mind, especially on every occasion. So always know your surroundings, always know the park rules. And if you go to most parks, at least here in the Northeast, a lot of the guard shacks, you can always ask those questions and they are more than happy to kind of state, or they may even have a quick flyer. So, you know, always have that available and around, you know, and make sure, you know, you make friends, not enemies with the park rangers. That will be your ally in the long haul for sure. So let me dive in here a little bit. Yeah. Bearded said, yeah, good topic. Park boundaries. Yeah, I actually have, funny you say that, as I got that in my list because I've had a few conversations with a few folks that live, at least here in the New England area, on park borders and boundaries of, you know, their backyards are literally in that area. And we've had conversations about that. And then, you know, boundaries are a tricky thing. Like there's some really great tools that we can talk about and share that I use a lot that I think would help solve a lot of your boundary issues. But as we all know, POTA is a gentleman's kind of agreement. You know, if it feels weird, then don't do it. It's simple as that. But if you think, you know, you're just on the edge, I tell you, I'm not going to be the one hunting you down and arguing with you because, yeah, once you submit your logs, I mean, a lot of times it's a done deal. And so once it's processed, it's good. And, you know, heck, it's not a, you know, it's not a full-time job, and we don't have to, you know, the only person you have to feel guilty with is yourself. So put it that way. If you can deal with yourself in that sense, and you're just one of those addicts, and that was actually, this is what kind of dovetailed in a lot of other topics that we're talking about future. I had a very close experience with a park that was close to my neighborhood, and I had a couple of activators there that were, we'll say, activating the park hard and fast, like, you know, 7,000 contacts, you know, in a couple of months, all on FT8 and stuff like that. But yeah, we'll share some of those stories and some of the gross stuff that, you know, might happen in parks on there, but we'll get into that as we kind of go going. So, you know, stick around for some of that stuff in the future, as always. And yeah, so let's see here. I'm going to go through the chat real quick so I make sure I pick up some. Question. Oh, yeah, interesting, Shannon. It does happen. It's kind of one of those things that I find that depending on what side of the fence you're on and how you deal with folks, people get very, very serious. Like it's you know, the end of the world. If you're off by time or you're off by a contact or whatever, they really take their contacts super serious. I know in the end, you know, if it's off or whatever, and I miss it, or, you know, it's always hard. And we'll talk future wise, that whole submitting logs again, because I talk to a lot of map coordinators and admins and stuff, and they always say that, you know, it's kind of, unless there's a really big underlying reason for them to change your calls or contacts, that you're better off just doing it locally on your log and then synchronizing that on, like, with LOTW, if that's what you do, or, you know, QRZ, or however you do your contact tracking for other awards outside of POTA. And again, they very much have the stance that, you know, hey, we'll try to make the best experience out of this, but they're not going to, obviously, the logs are not going to be accurate as, you know, your financial statement should every time. But yeah, definitely always an interesting experience. I'm sure I'd love to have you share that, and you know, we can learn a little bit from that. One of the cool ones that I love a lot, that people talk about when they first start, because, you know, depending on if you're a contest or whatever, and I did a POTA demo to a bunch of clubs that had a lot of contesters in it, and you'd be surprised that, like, they were like, can you spot? And I'm like, yeah, heck yeah. And they're like, they looked at me like I had, like, committed a felony. And I'm like, no, dude, this is very much encouraged. Like, there are tools there are services built into these logging apps that all encourage the spotting aspect of it, because We really want to make sure that, we get people out there and they're being heard, because you never know if you're spinning the dial, if you've got a weak station, and the band conditions kind of change on you for the better, that you might, be able to make a contact in a state that you didn't know you could get before, because the spotting page kind of helped you along. So yeah, spotting is highly encouraged. So if you are starting out to activate, then definitely, get familiar with that spotting page itself, play around with it as a hunter, and you will see that it will definitely benefit you. There are other tools too as well that we probably all are familiar with, like Ham Alert. I use that heavily. That runs off the spotting page, and RBN and other sources. So when I'm hunting I'm hunting activators or other parks that I need to get for certain states or awards or grids or whatever. I usually can get alerted from that and be able to jump on the radio when I can. All right, so let's make sure we stay caffeinated here. Okay, so let me see, catching up here on the chat. Yep, microwave one. Yeah, dipoles are a great antenna, and the best antenna is always the antenna that you have with you. And so whether you construct antennas, whether you buy them commercially or you have a mixed bag, any one of them are going to benefit you. Now, again, assessing your situation is obviously a good scenario. So when you go to a park, make sure you bring all of those antennas you might want to bring. Like a dipole, has its pros and cons. Dipole, primarily when mounting them, we won't talk about antenna efficiency right now, but in terms of getting them up in the air and getting them mounted, dipole is a little harder to get up and running than, say, an NFED. But, an NFED is a little harder to get up instead of setting up a vertical. It's kind of all whatever the scenario is. Like, I've been to beaches that are state parks here in New England, and there's not a tree in sight. So the only options I have are verticals or, a mast and a wire. And not a lot of times you can't set up a 10-meter mast at the beach and not be a big, as my wife says, eyesore. So you got to come up with some more creative ways to be able to get that wire up in the air. And sometimes verticals are better for that than others. So yeah, definitely, play with all these antennas. We'll do an antenna segment sometime soon, because I love fooling around with antennas. I don't have a plethora of knowledge like others do. Ziggy, a few others that, just their minds think in a different realm. But they're great resources for learning more how your antennas behave and how they can behave and where you're at. So it's all good stuff. Okay, so the last one I have, is it okay we're talking about easy layups here. Is it okay to set up and activate from your car? How many agree that that's okay? Let's throw one in the chat if you agree that setting up and activating from your car in the parking lot, as long as you're in the park, is a valid activation. Okay, well, nobody believes that. That's totally fine. I know here in New England, so all right, winter time does apply. So if you do have a winter like we do, yeah, activating from the car is totally acceptable and 100% encouraged. It is one of those things that, especially if you just don't have the space, or the parking lot seems to be bigger and, you can get away from most of the general public. Doing that. I actually did a previous activation for the RF Reliance 1-to-1 choke, and I was in a small parking lot, and I was like, okay, well, the only thing I can set up now is my 10-meter mast off of a hitch, and so I operate outside the car. But in essence, I used my car as a place to set up my antenna on and string out my wire antenna. So it's very acceptable and encouraged, especially, if it's one easier way to keep you from, having the EMTs show up at the park because you had heat exhaustion or whatever else. So always, play it smart when you're out there. We don't have to play in the emergency realms all the time. and pretend that we're always in that phase of like, okay, we've got to do this with 2 coconuts and a wire because we're practicing emergency communications. Just go out and do it. Learn your equipment, but do it in a safe and comfortable way, which is important. So so at this point, I've got kind of 2 more little sections here. We're at about like the half-hour mark. And again, I thank everybody here for joining in as always. It's good to see everybody here in the chat and those that are just kind of watching in the background. It's always good to hear from you guys. And so, yeah, if you've got questions or whatever, make sure you throw them in the chat. Yeah, Roger said, obviously, when you're activating from your vehicle, make sure it's inside the boundary. That is important, sure. And those boundaries are defined in some fashion, loosely fashioned, at least here in New England. It's very hard to get a good, fix on stuff. So, you just use common sense as always. And, the one thing that lacks a lot of things in life, as we all know. So yeah, if you apply it, it'll help you in a long time. Yeah, if she did, well, we have to talk to Matt there. I mean, those things are phenomenal. I love the one-to-one chokes. For the longest time, I always had coax with it. I always had inline chokes on my coax and never really thought twice for it. But then I started carrying some little thicker coax, and I did the same thing. I was like, once I put one in there, I was like, my gosh, it made the experience that much better in terms of just knocking down, RFI and other noise in the background. And yeah, I'm sure it would have knocked down all of the alternator and kept you nice and cool. So, all right. Well, we're going to dive now into my little section that I'm calling equipment. Now, this isn't all encompassing. So, if you've got a few that you kind of triggers a thought here, throw those in the chat for sure. But this one is always the first one that I get every time I do, either an activation or I'm talking with someone about POTA. It is, what is the best, and we'll say fill in the blank, radio, antenna, or battery. Now, I guess, and you've heard Josh, Ham Radio Crash Course, and others always say it depends. And I always hate that phrase, but at the same time, it is a very valid phrase. Yes, it does depend, but in essence, also considers a lot of factors of where you're coming from. Like, what's your budget? How much do you want to invest in the hobby? What's your motivators, driving you towards, buying or acquiring that purchase? One thing that we today have that we didn't have when I got my ticket 30 years ago was areas like social media and YouTube. YouTube, when I got back into the hobby right around COVID, was a wellspring of information about radios and, antennas and, everything in between. And so when I was like, okay, let's do a little quick search and find out what the latest and greatest, it opened my eyes widely. And so when I started into POTA, I just really kind of did more visual observation. So I talked to, a few people in and around, my clubs and in the area. Most of them didn't do POTA at the time, but, had their list of suggestions, and radios and stuff like that. But when POTA was really kind of starting to take off, like there wasn't a lot of resources out there for radios of like, everyone always kept saying, oh, bring your 7300 or bring your, when you fill in the blank, regular base HF radio. And I'm like, I'm not bringing a $1,500 or $1,800 radio out in the field. And I'll caveat that with a little asterisk here that it's okay if you got protection for it and, all of that stuff. For me, it's a lot of extra stuff, and it's not the best efficient way for me to be able to carry that around. Now, for my application, and I'll speak for myself here, is that I try to pack as light as possible, but I'm not soda light. I'm not like backpacking light. I still carry a lot of other extra stuff, but every device that I have, everything I have is always a little bit of a trade-off, like for weight or power or size versus efficiency or power, radio watts to, conditions kind of thing. So all I'll say with that is that check YouTube, watch a lot of the big popular POTA folks, Few when I started were KB9 VBRs. I mentioned last live stream. He was out in the field using his 891 K Murder, K8MRD, ham radio tube, 891 user. And what you can glean from a lot of that stuff is like, hey, yeah, that seems to be a popular radio. And, it's a pretty good price to functionality trade-off. And you could probably get a lot of life out of an 891 as an example, or a G90. Like I know Mike, N2MAK, he loves his or he had when he has G90, he loves his G90. Or maybe you're a QRP guy, you can afford a little bit more in 705 or the 1F or whatever. Those are very valid radios and very good to have, and, offer a lot of benefit. But when you're first starting out, you may not want to spend a lot. So like I have our club president, he gets Bass Pro Shop gift certificates from family members and stuff like that because his adjacent hobbies, he's a fisherman. But he's starting to get into POTA. Guess where he's buying his batteries from? He's buying LiPo 15 amp, 20 amp from Bass Pro Shops. Now, are they the POTA approved battery? No, it doesn't matter. It solves his need. He is able to get it for free and cheap because that's, kind of where he prides himself in it. And that's not a bad thing at all. Don't get me wrong there, guys. He will very much, he's from a long line of lineage of hams in our club that they like to do it themselves. They'll see a commercial antenna and like, oh, I can build that. And they'll go build that. They'll probably spend a lot more than what they spent on the commercial antenna just buying it right out, but they get the experience and the hands-on. And so, yeah, those folks definitely offer a lot in the benefit of being able to learn more in the hobby. But, your antennas and radios and batteries, you will not, and I always said this to every new ham, especially when they walk out the door and they kind of laugh at me like, what are you talking about? And we'll segue here. I'm going to do a little side segue. Yesterday, I stepped in and helped N1OG, and N1OG, the Grouch, if you guys know Paul, he is, a host of Live Free and Ham and good friend of mine. And the Apostle Paul official title of skydiver. So he asked me to step in and help out a little bit with our VE testing. We do in-person VE testing with the club, and we use exam tools and stuff. And long story short, I was there, and great experience. If you've never, if you're a VE or not a VE, become a VE. I guarantee you will feel the rewarding aspect of it very much, whether you do in-person or do the remote stuff. It's always cool to see people super excited to get their tests and pass, knowing that they worked really hard for it. But this girl had, with her husband, he had gone to test for his general. She was basically getting her technician because he was getting her he was already a ham and she wanted to be involved. So as she left, the first thing I said to her, I'm like, you're going to get your first radio, but no, it will not be your last radio. You will start to add more. And she looked at me like, yeah, whatever. I'm like, and when I said to her, I'm like, how many purses do you have? And she's like, oh, and she started to rattle off. I'm like, well, there you go. You didn't need one purse, did you? And so, it's the same attitude. So you'll never have just one radio. So always keep that in mind. Same thing with antennas. You'll always need one more antenna, or you always have one more antenna to build, all with the idea that, hey, it's part of the hobby. It makes it fun. And I'll throw the one caveat that I try to encourage everybody, every ham to do. Don't be a hoarder. If you're not using an antenna, if you're not using a attachment or a device or an accessory, and it's sitting in a box for a year, give it to a guy or a girl or somebody, young kid in the club. If you've got a bunch of HTs and maybe one of them or two of them get love every year when you take it to the ham fest and all the rest of them are sitting there, go find homes for them. Like, don't let them just sit there and do nothing. Get, the benefit to having them. But there's just like a part of me that's like, there could be somebody else in the club. And, when I was a ham way back when, in the early 90s, equipment was freaking expensive back then to get into the hobby because it was just such a small market. And there wasn't any of the Chinese stuff. So it was either Kenwood, ICOM, or Yaesu, or Linko. Linko was kind of the end of the small companies. And so, I was always super excited to receive a mobile or anything like that from any of the guys in the club that were passing that stuff on. So pass it forward, do that with equipment, People will love it. And you'll definitely keep another ham on the air, and we'll be making, what I call more noise, to keep the hobby going. So always good there. Yep. And well, M+1, Chris. Yes, I agree. M+1 is always important, but it's always important when you're out in the field or you're actually doing the ham radio activity. But if you have M+1 because you're accumulating N+1 and that antenna you bought, the thinking you might need, like if those that know, if you watch my video that I went down and did an activation with Chris, Whiskey 8 CJL, I think is called. And I always get that mixed up because the letters are too close to my initials. His son Parker was testing, and I had an antenna in my truck that a buddy pulled that I bought from Paul. And I was like, oh, that's my M+1 of my M+1 antenna. It's had in the truck for a year, just collecting space. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to pass it on. And Parker actually got his ticket, and, he's now got a great Buddy Pull Pro to add to his antenna farm to get him going there. So, M+1 is good as long as it doesn't, make you a hoarder out of it. So, yeah, N+2 helps too as well, or N+ infinity if you can put the infinity symbol, as long as you're, not killing yourself over it. All right, so let's keep plugging away here. So I got a couple of things. One big thing a lot of people ask that we all can probably attest to is like, how long does said battery last out in the field? I always have those conversations and talk on local repeaters to do people that are interested in POTA. And that one is always, I think I can get 4 hours, or I'll get 2 hours. I think the Traveling Ham did a test on a couple of batteries with his 891 that I thought were really cool. You can check out those videos where he talked about, or he took his batteries and ran them at different power levels to see how long he would get out of it in terms of an activation, it was really good to see, and definitely good information. So yeah, batteries, I think, are one thing where an area you can definitely have more than you really need. I've got every, 6 amp hour, 3 amp hour, 12, 15, the list goes on and on. I even, I'm getting into the 100 amp and 200 amp hour now options, just because, I might not take them out in the field every time, but if I'm doing some long activation for a camp out or whatever, those 100 amp hours will last and provide me everything that I need. So yeah, if you've got experiences with batteries there, Paul would say, but Paul actually does. Paul brings everything almost. I have yet been able to stump the grouch on, not having any said one thing of, something that I might need out in the field. So as Todd, my other co-host, will attest, is like, Eric doesn't bring stuff all the time. He just brings his Paul, and that's not that far from the truth. Although now Paul is out in Indiana, so I have to kind of step up to the plate a little bit. Hey, good to see you there. So we got a couple in the chat. Say hello. I just going through here real quick. Hey, Torres, how's it going? OTO, my OTO, not just TO. But anyway, we'll leave that there. And Chris, good to see you guys there. And Chris, made a quick mention there. He did catch my battery setup video. It took me a long time to build that little setup because I was so frustrated with it, but I just put out a video. If you're interested, check that out. That one is my little charging station. I love it now. I literally can take all my gear from an activation, take it out of the bag in one location, throw it all in the charger, put the bag away, take out my memory cards for any videos I might have recorded. But then if I'm ready for another activation, I can just go back in that same place, load up the bag, and I'm off and I'm running. And I usually, there's a couple other things I want to add to that video. I didn't touch base on all of my antennas and stuff that I have all in bags, because that is always been my struggle, as people may have noticed in the past, where I'll go to an activation and I'll have forgotten, my antenna or whatever. And a lot of times that's because I just didn't have it in a bag where I could grab everything related to it. So now I've got all like 3 vertical bags of the camera tripod bags that are padded, that have a bunch of my verticals in it. And they're all hanging on a hook, and they're all like kind of labeled and stuff. So I'll go into a little video if that you guys are interested in seeing some more of that stuff, to share how I keep all that organized, because it just makes things so modular and so easy, and I don't have to think about it because I know it's just going to be there and available. So all right. I don't know if he wants to be called Grouch 2.0. I think he likes to be the original OG, but you know, we'll see if that will stick for him. He's definitely, you know, I'm making sure the Apostle Paul is sticking because I think that's important for the purposes of, you know, staying in tune with Jesus. So, you know, we've got to have that religious experience. And especially if no one knows, and, you know, you're obviously a listener of Live Free and Ham, or maybe you're on Paul's channel, he will be down in Huntsville this year. And he's going to be jumping with, you know, oh my gosh, I just drew a blank. With Carlos. And it's both of those guys are going to be doing hopefully some radio stuff. But yeah, go down and support him. Excuse me. If you'll be down in Huntsville, make sure you swing by Paul's campsite. He's going to have a buttload of, or I should say the metric equivalent is butt ton of Live Free and Ham stuff, stickers, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So if you haven't gotten your Live Free and Ham stuff, he will have it. And he has been instructed to give it out as plentiful as possible. So, you know, if you haven't gotten any of that merch, you know, feel free to check him out because he'll be hanging out there all week and having some fun. So, Tortoise, thank you again, sir. We appreciate the $5 super chat as always. Thank you again for supporting the channel as always. And if you want to help support the channel, you know, I don't always bring that attention. You can always become a Patreon member there. We love our Patreon members. I'm always trying to add more to the Patreon side of things. And with that, you know, we always try to, you know, make sure, you know, you guys get exclusive access to all of the, you know, material and videos that I put out there. So if you want to kind of be in the in, I'm doing some of that stuff. I'm also kind of creating some materials. We'll say they're still under the, you know, wraps right now, but I'm putting out some custom stuff for my Patreon members. So if you want to get access to some of the insider baseball things that I'm doing, you know, head on over to the Patreon side, check that out. Those links are down in the description below of this video and all on my website as well and whatnot. So definitely can love your support and encouragement. And hey, and if you're not already, you can always become, you know, a YouTube member there as well. It costs nothing. You can subscribe and, you know, make sure you share and spread this stuff around because, you know, the more people we have in here, the funner the party's going to be. That's just kind of the way I look at it. So we always appreciate folks there. And thanks again for everybody joining this morning. I mean, it's awesome to see. We had 14 folks here viewing this. So I appreciate every one of you guys. Thanks again for, you know, supporting me because, you know, as my wife will say, I'm a freaking addict when it comes to, you know, the ham radio hobby. I'm always doing something around ham radio. Always love doing that. Always trying to, you know, encourage folks to get into it. And, you know, I can't do it without you guys, but at the same time, you guys help fuel me and keep me going. So thank you again for supporting everything that we do. All right. So let's kind of get into the last thing here. So equipment here, just to wrap this out. Some of you folks in the chat mentioned antennas. Yeah, we are going to try to get into a little bit of, you know, kind of the two wire or not two wire, I think is going to be our, and we'll allude to this because I wanted to dive into a little bit of a detailed episode next week. We're going to be talking about wire antennas and, you know, some of the wire antennas that are out there. We'll talk a little bit about verticals, but I think verticals kind of need their own episode a little bit. So we'll definitely dive into two of those sections, but we're next week. If you're a wire, you know, person, you love playing with wire antennas, we're going to dive heavily into that and talk more around, you know, getting that, you know, into the weeds, we'll say. So yeah, keep in mind with that one. Let me see here. Let's turn this off and throw this in here. All right, cool. So, all right, let's dive into my last equipment question that I got in here. Then there was plenty more, but you know, I think we'll probably touch upon a lot of those as we talk in future episodes there. So, oh yes, Shannon. Yeah, sorry, I just saw your comment there about getting into going to Huntsville. I too wish I could go to Huntsville schedule wise. Planning more for Dayton, so hopefully, and you know, I'll use this as kind of a stake in the ground here. We're hopefully going to try to get to Dayton in 2026. So us as Live Free and Ham, we're definitely interested in doing some of that. So maybe, you know, as we get closer and start coordinating that stuff, we've got our big 24-hour POTA camp out coming up. A lot of the folks here in the chat I know are definitely going to be attending, so looking forward to seeing you guys there and hanging out. If you want to learn more about that, you can head over to livefreeandham.com/24hour dash or 24H dash POTA. And that'll be in September. So we're going to be at Greenfield State Park for a full 24 hours. We're going to be on radio, live streaming. So come support us. We'll be streaming across all of our channels. We'd love to have you guys come support us. And it's going to be 24 hours of content all the way straight through. I think YouTube's got a limit where you have to stop after a while and then reset. So we might have to at the, midnight hour cut over, but we'll figure all those details out later. But I'd love to have you guys support us. We're going to try to see if I'm trying to, and don't hold me to this yet, but hopefully we can do a little bit of a fundraiser too, where we can support TI and everything, those guys do over there. So we can raise some money there along the way. So we'll talk more about that, but that's kind of a thought that I'm having in my head about that. So let's talk about my last little section. This is kind of what I'm talking meta, because these tends to be things that get asked a lot of times, but don't just kind of fall into any one category there at all. Yeah, Chris, we definitely need to do something when Dayton rolls around for sure. I'd love to meet all you guys and shake a few hands and do a couple of fist bumps. So it's always good, to see and meet you guys, because baseball, eyeball QSOs are awesome, more than, making just the contacts and seeing you guys across the interwebs. But always love that stuff. So these last couple of questions here are my meta stuff. So here's one thing that kind of came up. It's funny, is that how many of you guys participate in Sports Parks weekends? Let's throw a quick little one in the chat there. How many of you guys done that in general? Okay, so I see Shannon in there. Cool. And the other Shannon. We got two Shannons today, so good job. Yeah, okay. So a lot of folks, everyone's doing Sports Parks weekend. So how many know when Sports Parks weekends are? If you know them, list the three months or the 3 periods that happen in them. I'm curious, because not a lot of people know that there's actually 3 Sports Parks weekends. So while that's kind of chiming through, and no cheating, because everybody has to hop up to their website there. Sports Parks weekends are always the 3rd weekend, and occur in like every quarter, roughly every year. And so it's not just spring and summer. And actually, sorry, I didn't see your comma there. So this is where that comma helps. But yes, it is spring, summer, and fall there. And so they're always the 3rd weekends of each of those months, and those dates you can find officially up there on the website. But it's a lot like, and we'll say Field Day is, it's always the same 3rd weekend of every one of those months. And a lot of people forget about the summer months, because it's like, you get super busy and whatnot. I know I did this year. We actually had one of my club members, mentioned in our last club meeting, saying he was going to go up and do an activation for Sports Parks weekend. And I went, there's one in the summertime? And so, and I had a conversation, and we're like, we've got to make this more normal in our club. And so, getting out and doing more of those things. So we're starting the ball rolling that. So Sports Parks weekend, it is an awesome time. I know we do in our club what we call our POTA meetup, and we do it actually fall and spring, because around here in New England, not a lot of people like the bugs. So, and summertime for us, for a lot of folks, they take a lot of vacations here up north. And so not always a popular time, but our fall and spring always tend to be a super fun event, and a lot of folks come out. We've, I think on any one given occasion, had about 25 people show up. Public, we go to like our local parks in the area, and we just set up, and sometimes we'll do food, sometimes we don't. I find, and I talked with several people on this, an attractor to any event is always free food. So, if you're thinking about maybe doing something, consider bringing food into the picture there, because it'll keep a lot of hams and folks hanging around and playing radio more. So always a good, consideration, especially if you can afford it, or, do a little bit of a fundraiser there for it. Although I find the last one we did, I put out a can because everyone was throwing money at me left and right, and it literally paid for the event and a little bit of some that I get back to the club. So it's always good, and hams usually tend to be pretty good and generous about that stuff. So yeah, support your Arcs weekend. Always a great time. Bring new technicians out. If you can get a chance to grab a new technician, bring them on a support your parks weekend, and let them experience kind of the fun and enjoyment of what it offers, because it is a great event because they get to see everything and hear everything on the air. And a lot of times the bands tend to be pretty good. So, it benefits you all around, and let them operate with your own, your own call there. And so get them going. Now, we all know that, the best thing and best advice to offer, especially new technicians, to take them out and do, an activation. I always offer, and I actually, one of our new club members that we had at our club meeting didn't know about POTA. And I was like, all right, dude, you just need to come with me. Let's, we swapped phone numbers. We texted each other. And so we're going to try to arrange a time where we can go out and, I can walk them through an activation. And, if the 10-meter band, now at this time of the year, is really tough. But heck, we'll let them get on. I'll use our club call W1 Live Free and Ham, so he can get on and play in all the bands and get a chance to get his whistle wet, because it might move him faster along the line to getting his general if he wants to. But hey, we'll play in the technician bands too as well, and I definitely going to try to do more VHF and UHF at that level, because I think it's you'd be surprised. Like, I don't know how that's possible, especially if you're in this day and age with social media, but you'd be surprised. A lot of people are like, they had no idea. Like they hear about contesting, they hear about repeaters and all of those other modes and digital and stuff like that. But yeah, it sometimes just gets missed. And I don't know if that's a fault of us POTA folks, or just the fact that we're always POTAing and activating all the time, that, we're too busy to, promote it. So all good. Yeah. POTA. That's my New England accent coming out in Boston. So, yeah. Yeah. Technicians, like I said, yeah, they can definitely operate, get them out on 10 meters, show them the bands, definitely show them VHF and UHF contacts, even do the, tell them to bring their HTs if they got their HTs, and just do what we call a butt to nut, I think is how it was referred to, contact when it came to, using 2 meters simplex there, for a contact. So yeah, give that a shot, try those out, let them get, a taste of it. And I guarantee they'll just take off. I mean, Paul and both Todd, profess heavily on our Live Free and Ham show that they always, thanked me because, I dragged them out to a POTA, one time. And at that point they were like, I don't know what we're doing. And by the time they were done, they were freaking hooked and ready to rock and roll. And we're already thinking about buying their own gear and getting going. So, all right, last couple ones here. This one, as I alluded to, we're going to get into this one. And again, like I said, this whole brew and activate thing, we're going to dive into everything POTA. And so we're going to talk about some of the not so great stuff that a lot of, YouTubers might talk, but I'm doing it not for views and not stuff, but I want to talk about it in the community because, hey, everyone has a different opinion. But this question was, is if I find activator cheating, maybe submitting some false logs or padding their logs or, doing something that's a little bit, should I report it to the POTA help desk? Now, I don't want to get into major details with this one. I think a lot of times, and in my experience, I did follow protocol. And in that process, it was one of those things that I just was like, when it was all said and done, I think I understood where they were coming from. And we're talking about the administrators providing information back. But I didn't feel like that person was, basically held accountable. And so we're going to talk a whole episode around that. And, we'll share some of those details, and we'll try to we'll definitely keep names and call signs out of it. But ultimately the idea is like, do what is comfortable for you, but don't do it to a fault that you're causing, more harm to yourself and your overall, view of the program, because it happens everywhere. Contesters do it. anytime awards and people start chasing papers and start chasing stuff, they can get crazy. And we all know that that's never really a good thing, because in essence, it sours it for the whole bunch. So, do what you have to do to be able to clear your contents, but maybe just bring it to a person's attention, and do it kind of more out of not, we're going to crucify them, but do it in the sense that, you just bring it to their attention. And if they don't, if they don't do it, or they don't change their ways, they just fight you on it, or they go away, then, just be okay with that and move on. Because in the end, that for that park, that top activator might be, just something in your mind that you cross out, because you'll never see that. But yeah, it's always it's a tough. I mean, Chris obviously said it here. It's always it's again, it's a life lesson kind of thing. Like, if they're doing that in life, maybe they do that in their professional career, maybe they do that elsewhere, and it's just kind of one of those things that it's a sad thing, because it's a great hobby and they're not doing anything except to do it for bragging rights. But it also might be a pressure thing. Like, I know in my experience, the person that was doing it, he was part of a larger group that was very much always had to be in the limelight, always had to be the best, always had to be, number one, always had to, have the headline all the time. And so I'm sure it probably got to him where, he wanted to feel like part of that crew to endanger the rest of them. So yeah, we'll get into more of that in a future episode. So stay tuned for that. And love to have and hear other people's experiences along the way. And I'll reach out to you guys. So just a quick thing here. If you are not already a part of it, I would love to have you guys come join us, over here on the Discord. So I've got on the Live Free and Ham Discord, if you're not already a subscriber, the link I think is in the chat or in the description down below. If not, you can head over to the livefreeandham.com website. The Discord link is over there. Come join us. There is a group or a channel over there called N1NJUR Brew and Activate. And we're having the conversation over there. So, if once this episode kind of comes into the foreground there, I'm going to be reaching out to folks over there, and, maybe we can gather your stories. And I'd love to have you guys on, if you're, so willing to come in and share your stories. And, we can have a little bit of a conversation and maybe come to some better place that we can all feel comfortable. And we can all come to some semblance of, making everything equal per se in the hobby as best as we can. So yeah, head on over to Live Free and Ham if you're not already listening or getting updates to the N1JR Brew and Activate. Love to have you over there, and we'll keep the conversation going. And so yeah, we can talk more and in and around that. All right. So last few here, if I all right, paper logging. I know a lot of folks still love paper logging. I kind of grew up in that space with a lot of hams writing. I'm a lefty. I suck. I have doctor's handwriting. I can't tell you how many times when we did logging at field days, they would be like, can you tell me what this call says? Can you tell me? Like, they ended up having like a translator for me when I was doing radio at, my high school years, because my handwriting was so bad. But at the same time, they didn't have computers to bring out in the field, because they were still clunky and big. And even the laptops were still, that big. So all with that is like, if you do paper logging, yeah, it's totally acceptable, totally fine. There's nothing wrong with it. And you'll hear that from me directly, because, hey, do what's comfortable. I have a good friend, Tim, KC1QDK. We had on Greenham. His call sign now is Whiskey Mike 1 Hotel. We refer to him as White Man 1 Horse, or at least that's the moniker that I've dubbed him, just so I can remember the call. But he loves to paper log, and then he converts everything from there. Totally acceptable to do. For me, it's an extra added step, and I will use every shortcut to my avail. And heck, if I can go straight from, folks and apps like Polo and other stuff right into uploading my log, then all the better. And even when we get auto logging, submission, it's one less step that I'll have to do when having to upload to a share site, and then, upload that log later. So always looking forward to that, and, always looking for better ways. But paper logging is perfectly fine. You just have to translate that paper log into, something that is very much, electronic, so you can submit it. Let me just dive here in the chat. Yeah, John, POTA is supposed to be fun. That is a guarantee. We will dive into more of those conversations in the future for sure. Because, you know, one little thing can ruin the whole event for a lot of people. And I do not want to see that for sure going forward. Yeah. And that is true, Shannon. A lot of that stuff will catch up with you. I can't tell you how many times I've seen like a lot of people just, you know, they hold a grudge for a time about certain things, or they try to stand their ground and they know that, you know, they're doing more harm than anything else. Yep. Chris, we are still, I will dive in this real quick. I won't take up too much time because we'll talk about it in Live Free and Ham. We are going to be posting that detail ASAP. I'm still waiting for one caterer to get back to me. They are slowing the ball up, and I keep asking them. And at this point, by the time Monday rolls around, if I don't hear anything from them, we're just going to go the other route because we're trying to put all of the pieces together so everybody can start registering and getting books, you know, and travel time and stuff like that. So, yeah, that is coming soon. And we will definitely keep you in the loop on that one. All right. So just keep going through here. Yeah, Chris. Chicken scratches. Yeah, like I said, I should have been a doctor myself too as well. I'm a lefty on top of it, so it makes it even worse. I can't tell you how many times when I was in Catholic school, the nuns would force me to write right-handed because my left hand would smudge everything across the chalk line, and I have marks on the back of my neck still, I think, or indentation still from that metal tip. So, yeah, if that doesn't date you. Oh, okay. Well, hey, if you're a righty there, and you know, we're brothers from another mother then. Yep, I can throw the Discord link in here. Let me go grab that really quickly here, just so everybody has it. Let me go here. Already in Discord. I will throw that in there. Where is it? Come on. There we go. Invite. All right. Let's do edit. We'll do never generate copy. Okay, let me throw that here in the chat for everybody. Oh, sorry, the keys. Okay, so there's the Discord link to Live Free and Ham. So feel free to jump over there and become part of that group there. All right, so just catching up here in the chat. You guys are pretty chatty this morning, which is awesome. I don't use either side of my brain, depending on you know, who you talk to there, Chris. But we'll see. All right, okay. So the last one I've got for just some of the meta stuff, and again, if you guys got any questions you want to add in, as I mentioned to the beginning of the live stream here, I'm putting together kind of a book, and so like if you've got a couple of questions that you want to add to that book, it's going to be an ebook for everybody to have, and it's really just going to be a culmination of everything that we can share together, that we can, you know, use among all of us. You know, we could share with other people and keep adding to it. The idea is it's just I want to be able to make it like excuse the phrase, a Bible of POTA, but you know, something that's more loosely covered that evolves a long time, and I don't mind maintaining it on the long run. So yeah, feel for sure you know, to throw questions there in that Discord chat about stuff that I you know, touched upon that I or may have not touched upon, I should say, about you know, everything related to things around POTA and kill this. Yeah. All right, cool. And so continuing on with the last question here. All right. So the last one, where was it? Okay. So when activating after you complete, and I pulled this off of, I think yesterday, I found this on one of the Discord. This one's always a stickler with me, and I'm curious to see where everybody stands on this one. And this is kind of more protocol about how, when you're doing your activation, when you're activating and you say you got to pile up and you're, you know, picking a few call signs out of the list, and you go through the typical exchange with them, and you say 7-3, they say 7-3 back to you. When you make the next call, do you find yourself saying, thanks again, 7-3, this is N1JUR, QRZ, or do you find yourself saying, thanks again, 7-3, QRZ, this is N1JUR? I have a tough time with this one, and I can't tell you how much, because it drives me bonkers as I'll watch YouTubers, you know, do their videos, and they'll always do it the wrong way. Like and this is the only thing you'll ever, you know, fight me on, is I always use QRZ because we all know the Q call, QRZ is okay, waiting for the next station. And when you throw your call sign out after that, you're not giving them an opportunity to answer. And I know in this day and age, a lot of activators have their own styles, and it's like rapid fire, contesting kind of style, or it's all over the map and they don't even say QRZ and they just wait for someone to throw out their call, which I think is a little challenging. I mean, it might be showing my age, but yeah, I like to be able to be a little clean with that. So you will fight me all the time on this, but I always make sure that that's the one thing I do always correctly. And you'll find that I have never done it wrong in any other video. And I like to invite you to prove me wrong. But it's always, this is N1JUR QRZ or whatever your call sign is. So, don't be calling yourself N1JUR. QRZ says, okay, I'm ready to go. And if you hear nothing after that, then, pick up the rhythm again and starting CQ POTA. But QRZ basically is the de facto standard that I know that says, hey, I'm ready. Bring on the next call. Not like, hey, I'm ready. Oh, and here's my call sign. Because hopefully those hunters and those people have already, or the park to parks have been listening for a while, and they already know who you are. I know they always forget in the midst of the firestorm of trying to get contact information that they don't remember your call or they couldn't hear it fully or whatever. But yeah. Exactly. Roger, you are in the right camp there. There is only one way to do that, and then QRZ. Yeah, the problem with that one is you're using the proverbial female voice, and so it doesn't matter what Shannon could say, go pound sand, and everybody will be like, sure, okay, here's my call, and they'll throw it out there. So it just works to your benefit. I as we all may have heard on some of previous episodes, I always have my daughter's voice pre-recorded on my 891 as the emergency brake class, and that always has saved my butt in a couple of times. So I'll be the first to admit it. Hey, I there's no shame in my game. I've used her voice, and then the hunters have been like, "Where's the female? Where's the second op?" I'm like, "Oh, no second op." Yes, it is 100% real. We all know that for sure, there, Shannon. Yeah, I will admit to that fully and embrace it. This is the way it goes. All right. So out of all of these questions, anything that you guys maybe have added, you can feel free to throw them in the chat. We can chit chat a little bit about that because we have about another 15 minutes or so here. If not, definitely please help contribute to this little ebook here that we're putting together. Definitely be a part of it. I will definitely give anybody who submits stuff, I will give credit to you guys. So you'll be, that part of that whole process, because I think it's a great community effort. Yeah, that one I can't come to quite yet, Chris. I am not ready to, use a child's voice. I think that's a little pushing the envelope a little too much, but hey, to each their own. I know Paul's done it in the past and he's got a live stream to prove it. Well, hey, you can kind of get away with that because, you don't have to worry about that. But eventually, once you start dealing with pileups, so if they ever come back, it is definitely a thing. And CW might be woke. See, I think we should bring Spark Gap back if you're going to kind of go down that road. But that's another story for another time. All right. So cool. So outside of that, again, thank you everybody for hanging out with me this morning. It's been a blast. I appreciate all of the guys and gals that subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys for the support. It's always great to see, all the interactions, because I don't want to be, the worst thing for me is to be a talking head. And hopefully today wasn't one of those ways. I'm definitely going to want to, have other people. So if you want to be involved in this, you want to come on, definitely when I post in the channel there, I'll reach out to folks and, feel free to, come on, because I'd love to have a great conversation. It'd be fun. And then that way you don't have to hear me droning on over and over again. Not that, I don't mind. I love talking about POTA, and POTA, I I have friends who were like, oh, here comes Eric. He's going to be talking about POTA again. So it's totally fine. But yeah, thank you guys again. We appreciate the support as always. And definitely if you enjoy more of this content, I've got Live Free and Ham too as well. Love to have you over there. And I know a lot of you guys in the chat there are definitely supporters of Paul, and hang out with him often, and he's always a blast. So, all right. Well, hey, I guess with that, it's been fun. And thank you guys again for everything that you guys do, and definitely being out there in the air. I know I have a lot of you guys in Ham Alert. It's always fun to make contact and work you guys again. And now that like a lot of my logging systems have repeat, notifications, it's always good to see contacts and make contacts, because voices I tend to pick up on better. I don't know about yourself, but I know when like I'm working on contacts on the air and I can hear certain voices over repetitive times, I'm more quick to pick up on that than the call sign. But the systems, Polo and the like, have always been about, reminding me that folks have worked me before. And it definitely helps because, they definitely are a big supporter of me. And, it's always fun to work those guys. So, yeah. Any questions you guys have that, I might have missed that you want to throw there in the chat? Otherwise, I think we can kind of wrap this up today. And, as always, thanks again for being part of Brew and Activate. So with that, like I said, just make sure you support the channel, subscribe, like, share this with other folks on other Discords as well, because we're going to be doing this every Sunday. So every Sunday, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be doing at least 90 minutes, if not an hour. And we're going to talk everything POTA and not veer off left and right. So if you're not into POTA, there are other channels. I know I've seen a few pop-ups from a few other live streams from other folks talking. So, check them out, support them. But hey, we're going to get diehard POTA, and this is the place for that. So again, until next time, I'm Eric saying 7-3. We're going to say keep your radios on and that PTT down and POTA on, guys.